All of the books have already been written with a formula for the victory of planet Earth. They are not being applied because the leaders are not there and the followers are not there. This is what we propose to do through the education of the heart, through our Montessori schools, through Summit University. But even this we cannot accomplish if some do not come forward who have the heart to serve and to strive in the capacity of teacher, in the capacity of leader and follower in these very goals. No thing that the masters propose can be accomplished if there are not those who have the integrated personality in God, which we learned about through the dictations of our Easter conference. The integrated personality of God is one who has externalized the Christ consciousness, is one in whom there burns a threefold flame that is in action day after day. The integrated personality in God, that is the point of the conscious mind in action. Plans are formulated and put in motion in the mental body, and the sacred labor occurs in the third quadrant, which we call the emotional body. It is well to think of the third quadrant as the quadrant of desire, because the bottom line of action of people on earth is that we do what we want. Our desires move us. If we have a desire, we do something. If we lack the desire, we do not make the effort. We sit. All of us have to contain, more or less, some element of desire to do what we are doing right here in Montana. To be together under this tent, all of us had to contain the desire to be here. Those who did not contain the desire did not come. Your sacred labor, your profession, your work, your life is how you can read what your desire is. Maybe things are ambivalent. Maybe you go this way and then the other way. Maybe you haven't charted the course of your destiny. Maybe you haven't begun in the computer of the mind of God, in the etheric octave, drawn the forces together, formulated a strategy for life. And therefore, when it comes to the sacred labor of applying the desire, you're not one-pointed because you haven't gone through the lawful cycles. Everything is in flux between the mental and the emotional body. This very moment, we can change our thought. We can change our feeling. Instantly, in the presence of the mind of Christ, we can have a new be attitude. We can harness our feelings and our desires to the will of God. But once we have committed an act, spent our money, which is the essence of our desire, harnessed ourselves to this or that project, gone in this direction, we are basically committed. We're into the physical octave. We have tied ourselves and locked ourselves into this or that situation. At that point, it is more difficult to undo. This is why the strategy is to attack the enemy's plans. Now, if you do not do this, and the enemy moves forward with his plans, if you haven't nipped him in the bud, the next best thing is to disrupt his alliances. His alliances are his forces, those who move with him, those who support him, those who multiply his plan and put it into action. Do not allow your enemies to get together. Don't allow all your bad habits to get together and overtake you and destroy your body, your mind, or your soul. Look into the matter of his alliances and cause them to be severed and dissolved. If an enemy has alliances, the problem is grave and the enemy's position strong. If he has no alliances, the problem is minor and the enemy's position weak. We can see this in dealing with children. We help them to overcome one by one. The older they grow, the more all of their forces are moving in one direction. Their alliances are set. It is much more difficult to break a momentum of stubbornness as that stubbornness becomes more and more concrete in human habit patterns. So the enemy of Christ in the child must be dealt with early, before conception. Before conception, we deal with the enemy of the child. We deal with the enemy within ourselves. And we make the calls for that child in Christ to overcome the momentums of the past before he is even born, before even the full 9 months are complete. Meeting the strategy before it becomes physical. The next best, if you cannot disrupt the enemy's alliances, is to attack his army. He who struggles for victory with naked blades is not a good general. Battles are dangerous affairs. If you cannot nip his plans in the bud or disrupt his alliances when they are about to be consummated, sharpen your weapons to gain the victory. Sharpen the mind of Christ within yourself. Sharpen your use of the science of the spoken word. Call upon all of the forces of heaven to save the soul of that child, your own soul. Sharpen the blades. Sharpen the mind of understanding and go after it with the full alliance of your own forces, of your own Christhood. To be divided within oneself is self-defeating. How can you overcome an army of the enemy if you yourself are divided? The worst policy is to attack cities. Attack cities only when there is no alternative. To prepare the shielded wagons and make ready the necessary arms and equipment requires at least 3 months. To pile up earthen ramps against the walls, an additional 3 months will be needed. If the general is unable to control his impatience and orders his troops to swarm up the wall like ants, 1/3 of them will be killed without taking the city. Such is the calamity of these attacks. Thus, in strategy, we find that unless the general have the balanced threefold flame, he will not observe the practical and the effective, and thus one can lose one's forces. You know how this is done within oneself. Without proper and necessary preparation, sometimes we tackle something and we fail to overcome what we should be overcoming or to complete the task because we haven't prepared, we haven't assessed our forces. In the later Wei, the Emperor Tai Wu led 100,000 troops to attack the Sung general San Qi at Yutai. The emperor first asked San Qi for some wine. San Qi sealed up a pot full of urine and sent it to him. Tai Wu was transported with rage and immediately attacked the city, ordering his troops to scale the walls and engage in close combat. Corpses piled up to the top of the walls, and after 30 days of this, the dead exceeded half his force. Thus those skilled in war subdue the enemy's army without battle. They capture his cities without assaulting them and overthrow his state of consciousness without protracted operations. They conquer by strategy. In the latter Han, the Marquis of San, Sang Ku, surrounded the Yao rebels at Wanwu, but during a succession of months was unable to take the city. His officers and men were ill and covered with ulcers. The king of Tonghai spoke to Sang Kung, saying, "Now you have amassed troops and encircled the enemy, who is determined to fight to the death. This is no strategy. You should lift the siege. Let them know that an escape route is open, and they will flee and disperse. Then any village constable will be able to capture them." Sang Kung followed this advice and took Wanwu. Your aim must be to take all under heaven intact. You want the child intact. You want to defeat the enemy of the child within himself and within society. But you do not want to destroy the child in the process. And psychologically, you can destroy a child by condemnation, by cruelty, by subtle measures and tactics. And instead of destroying the enemy of the child, the condemnation heaped upon him is the destruction of his mind and his psychology, whereby he himself must conquer himself. We cannot all rush from this tent with our steeds, galloping in every different direction, not knowing the way to go or who is the enemy or what is the strategy. We must understand the seat of the conscious mind. We must understand the human consciousness and the Christ consciousness. And this community, in the name of Saint Germain, must have a strategy for victory in peace and in war. And this teaching of Sun Tzu must be studied and implemented by each and every wise son and daughter of God. Your aim must be to take all under heaven intact. Thus your troops are not worn out, and your gains will be complete. This is the art of offensive strategy. Consequently, the art of using troops is this: when 10 to the enemy's 1, surround him. When 5 times his strength, attack him. If my force is 5 times that of the enemy, I alarm him to the front, surprise him to the rear, create an uproar in the east, and strike in the west. If double his strength, divide him. If a 2-to-1 superiority is insufficient to manipulate the situation, we use a distracting force to divide his army. Therefore, the Grand Duke said, if one is unable to influence the enemy to divide his forces, he cannot discuss unusual tactics. If equally matched, you may engage him. In these circumstances, only the able general can win. If weaker numerically, be capable of withdrawing. Jesus said, agree with thine enemy quickly whilst thou art in the way with him. When you are confronted by an overpowering serpent, a dinosaur in the woods, or a grizzly bear, agree with him. Recognize that you are weaker numerically in that moment, and you will have to retract, summon your forces, and develop a new strategy to conquer. Discretion is the better part of valor. You don't rush in where angels fear to tread. You assess the situation and determine how you are going to overcome. If you start marching with banners on some of our social issues, you could bring down the whole nation against you. Do you remember Anita Bryant? And all of the gays in the whole nation came down upon her. She did not have the forces to deal with it. It broke up her marriage, and she finally capitulated. And what did she gain? She gained a display of fanaticism against a certain group in our society, which in and of themselves also have the gift of free will from God. And therefore, what is the strategy? The strategy is enlightenment. Take the enemy intact, turn him upside down, and get him on your side. But to simply lunge at a wall or at an enemy, and then to arouse that enemy and bring down a house of cards upon oneself, is really to be stupid, to betray the brotherhood, and to expose within oneself the hatred of the mother and the failure syndrome. One must be a strategist, and one must watch the tendency toward bravado. The same is true in attacking problems of education. Sometimes moving in full force against those whose consciousness is aligned with liberal philosophies and humanist strategies is not the way. But to be the Buddha and the teacher, to have the power of conversion of the Holy Spirit, the enemy's armies will lay down their weapons and kneel before the Lord of Shambhala. Thus we are warriors in peace and in war. If we find ourselves in a war, we fight. But yet we use the strategy of the faithful and true. Mohandas Gandhi himself had a strategy for war, and he said when all else failed, it might become necessary to take up arms. One doesn't often hear about this corollary to his peace movement. If weaker numerically, be capable of withdrawing. If your troops do not equal his, Temporarily avoid his initial onrush. Probably later you can take advantage of a soft spot. Then rouse yourself and seek victory with determined spirit. Determined spirit. That determination is the desire body that moves and determines that it will find the strategy, the point of the all-seeing eye of God, to undo the perversion of that eye on the part of the enemy. The determination to win is the marshaling of one's forces at one-pointedness. If you really want to win in the battle of life, you will make sacrifices. You will take that Kundalini fire and you will raise it all the way up the chakras, and you will deliver it with a full fire of the heart. And by the fire of the heart, drawing down the light of your I am presence, raising the mother flame within you, the power of the heart is invincible. It is the sacred heart of Jesus that was the victor on the cross. If the enemy is strong and I am weak, I temporarily withdraw and do not engage. This is the case when the abilities and courage of the generals and the efficiency of troops are equal. If I am in good order and the enemy is in disarray, if I am energetic and he careless, then even if he be numerically stronger, I can give battle. Thus, the projection of chaos, disorder, disarray in the enemy camp is one of the strategies of the warriors of peace. One can defeat anyone who is disorganized. Take yourself when you are disorganized. Can you summon any forces to get anything done in a given day or situation? That's why people take courses in personal management. The organization of one's time, energy, skills, and life is the bottom of the challenge of being a victor, and each one of us must do it. And if in all respects unequal, be capable of eluding him. Outfox him, elude him. Don't let him get near you while you are in that point of vulnerability because of inequality. For a small force is but booty for one more powerful. The Brotherhood has always taught us, do not let the enemy of the carnal mind in anyone lure you into battle on his ground. Never meet the enemy on his ground. Make him meet you on your ground, which is the force field of the Christ consciousness. Once you descend to the level of the logic of serpent, you have to use the logic of serpent to defeat the serpent. Once you are on his ground, if you force the serpent where you are, then the Christ in you will defeat him. He is no match for the Christ in the field of the Christ consciousness. Mencius said, "The small certainly cannot equal the large, nor can the weak match the strong, nor the few the many." Now the general is the protector of the state. If this protection is all-embracing, the state will surely be strong. If defective, the state will certainly be weak. A sovereign who obtains the right person prospers. One who fails to do so will be ruined. Thus one begins to understand the immense responsibility of leadership. The point of responsibility. The farther you go on the path, the more people for whom you are responsible, the greater the defeat when you are irresponsible, when you do not prepare, when you do not organize, when you leave out details, when you do not plan a strategy. To hold a simple meeting or a conference, or to do what we have done here, to mobilize ourselves in the middle of nowhere, where there was nothing till we came. This involves strategy. The strategy that is focalized not in just one person, but a number of capable leaders in this organization, and a number of experts in various departments that have expertise in their areas. We trust all goes well because we trust the God in the individual. We trust the disciples that they sense the immensity of the responsibility to create a platform where Saint Germain can speak and deliver his word. You combine the strategy of putting on the conference with the strategy that each and every one of you has had to figure out to be here, to manage your life, resources, families, businesses, to come together, and you see a vast strategy from the cosmic computer of the mind of God, the great divine director's causal body. A combination of strategies has produced and is producing a victory in our midst. Without the ascended masters as the true generals in the field, I myself would wonder who I was following, because I am a follower and I am a listener. I realize some people look to me as a leader, but I'm only a leader insofar as I am a follower. And if I cease to follow my leader, we all fall down. So look at yourself. See how many bright and shining faces are following your example, because you do not fail to see that any strategy will fail if you don't take care of the details. Thus it all goes back to the top. At the top of the pyramid, we look to El Moria, we look to Saint Germain, we look to Lanello. Each one of us is a part of God. To know the whole strategy, we need to tie into the whole mind of God, manifesting in the great white brotherhood, ascended and unascended. I don't know the total strategy of God. I hope I know my part of it. But the key to my own victory is that I do what I'm told. I obey the orders of the night commander. And I don't ask questions, so I don't always know why he is telling me to do what I am doing. But I know if I take that step, that very step itself will be self-revealing, and we will see the next and the next. Each of us, therefore, as a general or as a follower, walks by faith. And when we act on the principle of the law and the person we know who embodies the law and follow our hearts, we are nearest right. And that's all any of us can do, is be the nearest right, the right we can perceive, and act upon it. Now there are 3 ways in which a ruler can bring misfortune upon his army. Listen to this, all of you rulers, sitting in the seat of your Christ self. When ignorant that the army should not advance, to order an advance, or ignorant that it should not retire, to order a retirement. This is described as hobbling the army. Failure to tie into the troops, the co-workers, the staff. Failure to be sensitive to their hearts, their needs, their capacities, their strengths, their energies. The leader must know how far to push the army. He must know more than the army, just how much they can strive and transcend themselves. You need to know how far you can push yourself. You need to know what your reserve forces are within you, what you can call upon when necessary to have the most important victory of your life. And if you are not in training and haven't proven to yourself in lesser matters just how much light you can summon, if you indulge yourself, your 4 lower bodies, or your own children, you will find at the moment when they should reach and push and grasp the torch, that they will fall back and say, I can't, when really they can, if they understand the limitless resources available to the one who vows to conquer. The advance and retirement of the army, the yin, the yang, the in and the out cycles. What is the need of the moment? The advance and retirement of the army can be controlled by the general in accordance with prevailing circumstances. No evil is greater than commands of the sovereign from the court. When ignorant of military affairs, to participate in their administration, this causes the officers to be perplexed. It's important to know when you don't know when you are a leader. I listen to the advice of department heads. I ask them to assess the possible. Simply giving commands when one is totally ignorant of what it takes to accomplish something is the act of an unwise sovereign. One can only direct when one has an understanding of what one is directing. And therefore, many times people say to me, "What shall I do?" Well, I don't know what you should do because I don't understand fully your circumstances. Go to your general, go to your Christ self, and figure out logically and practically what you should be doing. Therefore, run your own businesses, direct your own life, your own community, your own households, your own factories. Don't ask me to offer advice out of the blue. You probably know much more about what you should be doing than I do. But I can always pray for you. I can always call for all of the ascended masters to intercede and help you. And I can incline my ear to hear your story and your plan and see if I have an idea. But maybe I won't have an idea. So analyzing this from my position, which each of you in your own way and your own circle of influence holds that position of sovereign, you need to realize when you should not be giving advice. When you don't know enough to advise, don't. Because it puts the freedom flame back on the individual, and he has the resources, and he will make the right decision. And even if something seems to go adversely as the result of a decision he makes, it still may not be a mistake, because given his resources, he needs to learn to live with the decision he makes, and therefore to desire from calamities to improve his knowledge, his wisdom, his awareness, his ability to make decisions. So there's a learning curve, and we all need to make mistakes, and none of us should condemn each other for our mistakes, because we needed to make them to get up and walk a straight path. So even a mistake might be the right answer in some cases. After all, if you watch little children between the ages of 1 and 3, you couldn't even count the amount of times they fall down before they truly learn to walk. We consider it normal. Walking is one of the most major accomplishments in the entire life of an individual. It defies gravity. It's extremely difficult to walk, to deal with the balance of forces in nature and in ourselves. And we expect toddlers to fall down until they master the art. And when they do, we and they think nothing of it. So, if you make mistakes mastering the greatest path of initiation there ever was, realize that it too is defying the laws of gravity, defying the carnal mind, and you are learning to be a strategist. So give yourself that freedom, but not indulgence. Give yourself freedom, but not indulgence. And learn the difference. An army cannot be run according to rules of etiquette. You remember the American soldiers in the Revolution, how they outsmarted the British troops? The old ways of war was that everybody lined up in rows on the battlefield, and at the signal, they would all shoot. Well, the Americans hid in the bushes and overtook the British there in Boston, and changed the entire art of war from that moment on. An army cannot be run according to rules of etiquette. As far as propriety, laws, and decrees are concerned, the army has its own code, which it ordinarily follows. If these are made identical with those used in governing a state, the officers will be bewildered. Benevolence and righteousness may be used to govern a state, but cannot be used to administer an army. Expediency and flexibility are used in administering an army, but cannot be used in governing a state. So you are flexible ready to change your plan of action at any moment it is necessary. The expedient is what must be done now to accomplish an immediate physical goal. Etiquette, benevolence, righteousness. Sometimes we hear chelas complaining that Moria is too harsh. They want every command to be preceded by a please, or by a story, or by an explanation. Meanwhile, we can lose the battle. So we need to learn to take the commands of our Christ self. We need to learn how to be direct to get a job done. And when we are on the receiving end, we have to understand that sometimes we move as an army and sometimes we move as the kingdom of God. And we need to understand the difference between the community lifestyle and interchange and the lifestyle of the army and the troops, which are the accelerating ones that are forging ahead, claiming new territory, conquering, and so forth. Expediency and directness. When ignorant of command problems, to share in the exercise of responsibilities. This engenders doubts in the minds of the officers. When someone who is ignorant of command problems shares in the exercise of responsibilities, this engenders doubts in the minds of the officers. Thus, there needs to be a co-equality amidst those who are exercising that decision-making power which we must have in order to move forward as one. If one ignorant of military matters is sent to participate in the administration of the army, then in every movement there will be disagreement and mutual frustration, and the entire army will be hamstrung. That is why Pi II memorialized the throne to withdraw the army supervisor. Only then was he able to pacify Cao Chu. In recent times, court officials have been used as supervisors of the army, and this is precisely what is wrong. We have seen how presidents of this nation, who function as the commander-in-chief but often do not have a military background, have been involved in making decisions and strategies of war to the undoing of all that the army has gained. You remember that MacArthur was called back from Korea because he determined to move and charge ahead and gain a total victory, and the president determined that he should not. So it was the president who held sway. We know that Roosevelt, Stalin, Churchill carved up Europe. Our own president was making military decisions. And there was often a division between the generals in the field and the White House. This is a great danger to our nation. It has been extremely costly. We know that Roosevelt lost Pearl Harbor because he made a military decision. He issued an ultimatum that could not be met. Japan attacked. He knew about the attack days in advance, and he came upon the strategy to let Japan attack Pearl Harbor, perhaps by thinking that it would galvanize the nation to enter the war and move against the Axis powers. Perhaps his strategy was better to lose that portion of the Navy and the armed forces and to use it as a psychological maneuver to draw the nation together. We realize that to become a military strategist in the ultimate sense of real wars on the planet takes training. And just because someone is elected to office, either as president or as a cabinet member, appointed or in Congress, does not make him qualified to make decisions in war. And this is one thing that the communists know, because the communists follow Sun Tzu to the letter. And this is how Mao took over China, by this very strategy. If the army is confused and suspicious, neighboring rulers will cause trouble. This is what is meant by the saying, a confused army leads to another's victory. Confusion, it's on the 6 o'clock line of the mother of Sanat Kumara. It is the mother's legions, the armies in matter that win. They are divided and conquered by confusion. The wrong person cannot be appointed to command. Kaukua is merely able to read his father's books and is as yet ignorant of correlating changing circumstances. Now your majesty, on account of his name, makes him the commander-in-chief. This is like gluing the pegs of a lute and then trying to tune it. The wrong person cannot be appointed to command. How often we have seen this be a problem. Now there are 5 circumstances in which victory may be predicted. He who knows when he can fight and when he cannot will be victorious. He who knows when he can fight and when he cannot will be victorious. He who understands how to use both large and small forces will be victorious. There are circumstances in war when many cannot attack few, and others when the weak can master the strong. One able to manipulate such circumstances will be victorious. He whose ranks are united in purpose will be victorious. The appropriate season is not as important as the advantages of the ground. These are not as important as harmonious human relations. He who is prudent and lies in wait for an enemy who is not will be victorious. Create an invincible army and await the enemy's moment of vulnerability. That sounds like Lord Maitreya himself. An invincible army of Chelas of the light take advantage of the vulnerability of the fallen ones. And they do have their vulnerability, and their vulnerability is their pride. Pride goeth before the fall. We need to know when the enemy is at the peak of his pride, and that is the point of the attack, even of the science of the spoken word. A gentleman said, "To rely on rustics and not prepare is the greatest of crimes. To be prepared beforehand for any contingency is the greatest of virtues." I think Saint Germain has designated this land to be prepared for any contingency, to form an army of light, to unite us, and thereby have the maximum strength for whatever it is that he desires to do. He is the Knight Commander, and how we appreciate his wisdom. He whose generals are able and not interfered with by the sovereign will be victorious. Therefore, Master Wang said, "To make appointments is the province of the sovereign, to decide on battle, that of the general." When I appoint an expert to do a job for me, I tell him to make the decisions. I listen, I hear the advice, I hear the reasons why, and if in my layman's understanding I do not perceive loopholes, and I have no prompting from on high, then I say, "You know your business, you make the decision." If I do have a prompting, but I cannot pinpoint it because I do not have the expertise, I ask for more research, more discovery, more finding out, and I ask for the flaw in the plan to be revealed to those involved or to me. And if that doesn't work, I demand that the will of God and beloved El Moria prevent whatever it is that is contemplated from happening if it is not the will of God. And therefore, if we are about to take a step that is unwise, and we have made that fervent call, El Moria never lets it come to pass. He always stops us from taking imprudent action or unwise action if we wisely make the call, surrender our will to his, and accept the consequences. If something hoped for doesn't come through, we accept it as his wisdom and go on and look for the door, look for the opening that he wants us to find as the best way to move forward, the best way to use our contributions, our treasury, to do the most good for the most numbers in the wisest way. A sovereign of high character and intelligence must be able to know the right man, should place the responsibility on him, and expect results. Now you think about that when you have to do a job that takes more than one, and you're in charge. The people you select for the team need to be people that can get a job done. Now in war, there may be 100 changes in each step. When one sees he can, he advances. When he sees that things are difficult, he retires. To say that a general must await commands of the sovereign in such circumstances is like informing a superior that you wish to put out a fire. Before the order to do so arrives, the ashes are cold. And it is said one must consult the army supervisor in these matters! Exclamation point. This is as if in building a house beside the road, one took advice from those who pass by. Of course, the work would never be completed. To put a rein on an able general while at the same time asking him to suppress a cunning enemy is like tying up the black hound of Han and then ordering him to catch elusive hares. What is the difference? It is in these 5 matters that the way to victory is known. Therefore I say, know the enemy and know yourself. In 100 battles, you will never be in peril. When you are ignorant of the enemy, but know yourself, your chances of winning or losing are equal. If ignorant both of your enemy and of yourself, you are certain in every battle to be in peril. Such people are called mad bandits. What can they expect if not defeat? I'd like to read you those 5 points. He who knows when he can fight and when he cannot will be victorious. That's number 1. Number 2, he who understands how to use both large and small forces will be victorious. Number 3, he whose ranks are united in purpose will be victorious. That's all of the energies of your 4 lower bodies and your chakras. All of your ranks are united in one purpose. 4, he who is prudent and lies in wait for an enemy who is not will be victorious. And 5, he whose generals are able and not interfered with by the sovereign will be victorious. Now the sovereign in you is your free will, and your general is your Christ self. So if you let yourself sit in the seat of your sovereign free will and move against your general who knows exactly how to win the battle against the carnal mind, you are obviously going to lose. Our sovereign free will must be turned over to the expert and the experts. When we want to do something in the area of our youth, we call upon Leto, or Venus, or Meta, or Mother Mary. When we want action on the strategy for the ascension, we turn over that sovereign free will to Serapis Bey. When we want to know how to get on with expanding freedom, we turn our sovereign free will over to the General Saint Germain, and so on and so forth. Yes, you are sovereign. You are all kings and queens. God gave you absolute, unlimited free will. You have the authority right now to do anything you want to do, anytime, anywhere. Isn't that so? Especially in the United States of America. You enjoy the greatest freedom of any people on earth. You are sovereign in your temple. So now, the wise exercise of the sovereign free will becomes our challenge. And how do we do it? We master and develop the threefold flame. And what we are doing is integrating with our general Christ self. The sovereign and the general become one. The sovereign free will, the soul that has free will, enters into the mind of the Christ self and agrees with it, learns its lessons and obeys. So, I'm going to give you a break. Run around and look at the sunshine, get some fresh air, get something to drink. It's not supper time. We're going to come right back. So when you hear the music begin, please rejoin me in the tent. God bless you.